out this morning. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to y'all. Today I'm going to be talking about fall vegetable gardening. A lot of people don't realize that we can plant a bunch of stuff in the fall, but we can. My name is Richard Lee. I always introduce myself as that fellow who's been at the nursery for forever. I work over at South Branch on 231. If you've ever dropped in over there, you've probably run into me either at the front or by someone radio going, "Hey Richard, do you know?" I've been there, like I said, 8 years. I grew up with my grandparents, helping my grandfather with all his vegetables, helping my grandmother with all of her flowers, and making sure that they kept out of each other's business. Because if my grandmother didn't get the pots planted, my grandfather would. I have this year been elected the president of the Master Gardener Association of Rutherford County. We do a lot of outreach, including presentations like this. We also throw classes in the spring for everybody to come attend. They're really, really fun. We do these free ones all summer long. If there's ever one that you missed, if you haven't found it yet, they are all posted on YouTube. So there's plenty of stuff to go back and watch and review, even previous iterations of this presentation. So fall vegetable gardening, which necessarily in our area rolls into the winter. So what is fall gardening? It's essentially going to be vegetable gardening just like what you did in the summer with a few tweaks. You're going to be extending your harvest well into the fall, all the way through winter. Some things you'll be able to carry over into next spring. You can use it to continue staggered and succession plantings of your plants. If you don't know what that is, that's where you'll take an entire season's worth of what you normally plant out. So I like to use beans as an example because everyone knows how many beans you can get from beans. They're very prolific. So instead of planting 6 rows of beans all at once, you'll go through and plant a row of beans. 2 weeks later, you'll plant another row of beans. Then 2 weeks after that, you'll plant another row. You just keep that pattern up until you get all your rows of beans planted. And that means that you're not out there carrying 7 or 8 5-gallon buckets of beans all at once. And before I get going too much further, I love questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions. So just raise your hand. If you can't hear me, raise your hand and holler at me and I'll talk loud. It's a great way to enjoy your garden all the way through the end of the year, and I'll look both growing wise and calendar wise. So why do you do a fall garden? Again, you're wanting to get that extra bit of growing season. You want that time to get more out of your yard and get more for your gardening buck. Have some fresh vegetables even whenever it's not normally available to you. Most of the time when you go to the store, the things you're getting are 2 to 3 weeks old sometimes. So they've been kept in freezers and refrigerators to keep them fresher, but this way you get to pick it straight off the vine and out of the ground. Some things grow better in the fall. Has anyone here ever tried growing broccoli over the course of the spring and the summer? How'd you do?
Horrible.
Broccoli, in my experience, is much better in our area to set out in the fall and let it carry on through the winter months. You usually get a much better, more consistent harvest out of it, and you're not constantly fighting it wanting to bolt. Bolting is where a plant like broccoli or lettuce takes them. They just go straight to seed. They don't spend any time in between building up flower heads or putting on leaf matter. They just get down to the business of being a plant. The business of being a plant is making more plants. Got some fewer pest and disease issues to deal with. A lot of bugs are already done by now. They like the heat as little as we do, at least a few of them. Flea beetles and some of your cabbage moths and everything, you don't have as much trouble with them in the fall months because they've already run their main course back in the early spring and summer. You get more rain and cooler temperatures as the year progresses, and instead of less rain and hotter temperatures as the year progresses. That makes both your life in the garden easier and the plant's life in the garden easier because they're getting more of what they want instead of less. Easier to be outside, my personal favorite. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the nice little heat spell we've had recently. Makes gardening just go down the drain with people. By the time it starts hitting the mid-90s, no one's coming through the nurseries. And if they are coming through the nurseries, they're having to come through the nurseries, and they're still not overly happy about it. Some plants taste better with cold. An excellent example of this is Brussels sprouts. They always taste better when they've been bit by the cold bug. Some plants can serve as cover crops for the winter. An excellent example of this is turnips. They give you a nice, good, deep root system. They kind of loosen and till up that topsoil area of your garden. The foliage can be eaten, the roots can be eaten throughout the winter. And then whenever you go through, you pull them all up, you can chuck them, mince them up and chuck them into the compost bin to make compost. And they've already tilled your soil up and want to take the plow through it. Problems with fall gardens. Now, all good things have their issues. Best spring summer varieties, so the ones you really like planting early that year, may not do as well going into the fall. Some of those plants aren't going to be as tough against the cold. Some of them aren't going to mature fast enough. You have to pay more attention because you do have that shrinking window of seasonal temperatures that makes everything do their best. Unexpected heat or drought. If we turn out to be super dry in September, you're going to have to go out there and water plants just like you would if it was getting dry in July or August. Sometimes we'll get early frosts that come through and happen before you expected them to.
Is covering the plant fine?
For frost, yes. Lots of the easy ways to take and get cloth or something over top of them. I actually got some slides in here, some different options for taking care of that particular seasonal need. Fall planting limits the work you can do in your garden. Fall is the best time to be amending your soil, to be adding extra compost to it, to be doing any of those additives the extension recommends with soil tests. So putting down your lime, putting out your gypsum, putting down your long-term sulfur. That way you're really adjusting your soil pH heavily. If you have a bunch of plants in the ground, you really can't do that as well. Sometimes it's a matter of planting things that are going to do that stuff for you. So if you need nitrogen in your soil, maybe plant a whole bunch of red clover or snow peas. That way they'll take and shove nitrogen into the soil through all through the winter. You can even do things like alfalfa that you can eat yourself along with your animals. All those make good cover crops. Some pests and disease will still remain throughout the fall. Bugs will always be with us, especially the aphids. As the weather gets cooler and nicer and the humidity kind of evens out with temperatures, they'll start showing up again. But as long as you're vigilant, you can take and watch out for those little guys. And some of your fall plants actually work really, really well to trap your pests. A good example of that is mustard greens. They grow really fast. They bounce back real quickly. If you have to cut them back to tear them out, you can replant them when they're back up again within a few weeks. So they're a good way to trap all those late season pests on something that you don't mind replacing because you can get more of it really fast. So who can grow a fall garden? Pretty much anybody. As long as you've got ground to grow and you're growing this summer, or you thought about growing this summer, you can put something in this fall. It's really, really easy. All you have to do is just find a spot. Raised beds, cropping like we talked about. Someone could have had peas or squash or something in this bed, already pulled it out like in August. And they went back through there and they put in onions and carrots, which are great little bedfellows for doing in the bed because they keep some pests off of each other because they kind of deter things. They work really well because they're a root crop, so you can pull off of them in our area all through the winter because we rarely get cold enough to start freezing stuff down deep. If you do have that as a concern, you can go through with a little straw over them, whether that be wheat or pine straw or just some real loose, long cut grass clippings. And they'll take and mulch them in for the winter. You can just pull them out as you need. So where do you plant? Pretty much like I said, anywhere you planted this year. Though there are some good places to take and watch and make sure. So the beds you've used, fall plantings to replace spent summer crops, and then microclimates. A lot of people aren't familiar with these. There are places in the yard where you have variances in temperature and humidity from what you normally have. So everyone's got that north side of the house where the only thing that grows is moss or the occasional hosta, and that's your microclimate. Even if it's in full sun, you can still get those plants to grow in that spot because it's usually cooler, holds a little bit more moisture throughout the day. So that can be a really good place to plant stuff that needs those temperatures. That's a great place to plant your leaf crops going into summer because they're going to have more time to be in those cooler, moist temperatures, they can put them out in full sun. So for fall gardening, we're looking for the inverse. We want the south side of the house. If there's a brick wall, that works really well because that's a big heat sink, holds a lot of nice warm temperatures for the plants through the night. It'll keep that frost off. And I'm sure a lot of folks have heard about anything you have tender, like pulling up underneath trees or other shrubs and bushes. That's because those trees and those shrubs are going to create localized areas of higher humidity and kind of hold in some more heat. And that's going to keep that frost off as well. So you can plant stuff up underneath things. It even works out better because as it gets cooler, trees lose their leaves. So that means your plants get more and more sun. So you can plant stuff in the shade, providing that protection late in the summer, early in the fall season. And as things get cooler, they'll get more and more light as the leaves fall off. Then you can take and turn around and use those leaves as mulch to take and put it in around everybody. So kind of nice little feeding back into the system. And anywhere else you might normally notice that the frost does not settle. So if you've got a spot where for years and years and years you've been pulling plants in from the yard to kind of protect them, go ahead and keep doing that in there, but swap over to doing some vegetables instead of all annuals or tropicals. Somewhere that's close to the kitchen, I cannot stress this enough. No one wants to go walking 800 yards out to the back field to go pick their vegetables when they get home. And as it gets colder, that becomes even more so. It's just like whenever it goes to get hot, no one wants to walk out that distance either. This also means that everything's closer for you to go water, it's closer for you to check for pests, it's closer for you to pick your food out. That way you can, your best case scenario is you have it right by that side door, that front door, and you just walk past it every single day whenever you come in and out of the house. The more frequently you can go past it, the faster you'll catch any problems that might occur. So when you start your garden, right now is actually the best time to start doing fall garden. That's why I try to get this class positioned at this time of the year. Right now we're approaching the time to do any of your normal summer vegetables as a late season crop. So there's still time to put out some tomatoes and peppers as long as you have plants that are ready to go. You can take and continue doing more sets of beans. You can continue to put out okra because it'll be able to get turned in. Now is like your last chance to get it in and still expect to harvest. That stuff takes anywhere between 100 and 140 days to set fruit. So by the time we start getting cold, it's ready to set all those squash. You can go out, pick them, throw them on a shelf, put them underneath the crawl space on some pallets, and you'll have squash to make squash soup and casseroles and squash dishes throughout the rest of the winter. Pumpkins, yes ma'am.
Your fall plantings, are you talking about starting the seeds now, or do you just sort of straight in the ground?
It depends on the plants. Some things you'll be better off doing the seeds on. Leaf vegetables, a little bit later on in the summer, you'll do better off on those. You can straight sow broccoli and it'll do all right. I think on my list I've got it as you're best off putting it out between July 15th and August 15th. But I would definitely reserve some seeds to start growing the house as transplants. That way you have some more to put out in case something goes wrong.
Right, because I don't have any room to put any fall stuff out right now.
Things like beans, if you want to try doing just late season crops of those, as you pull other plants out, just put those back in. And also just in general, as you pull stuff out, just throw things back into those places. Squash has got a real quick turnaround, just regular old yellow crookneck. So you can take and put it down if you really like it, or zucchini if you want that to store to make bread. Take and swap over to putting out onions, garlic. You can do that this time of year. You can get out some early sets of it, though you maybe a little bit later. Carrots, you can give a try this time of year, but it's usually better off to wait a little while. Leaf lettuce, if you've got a cooler spot, like what we were talking about earlier, that more side of the house, or you've got a spot where you maybe have some binding plants that cast good shade all day over part of your ground, that's a good area to put in some of your leaf vegetables and your cooler season root plants. And then you have your various selections. Most people think of radishes as a cool season crop, but there's a couple of radishes, one the icicle, which is a white radish, that it doesn't mind the heat at all. You just plant it out and it goes to town.
I have a question in regards to seed versus starts that you buy in nurseries.
Mhm.
Do the nurseries around here carry the little starts in this time of year and forward?
This portion of the year, it's hard to find transplants anywhere. Now, as we get into late August, September, you'll start seeing them pop up in stores again. Co-op will definitely have stuff again, because they always do. We try to get some stuff in over at our nursery. Your best bet may be to talk to some of the farmers out here, see if they have any excess to take and sell off. But for the fall, you're usually best off doing your seeds yourself or making your transplants yourself in-house. And it's a lot easier to take and do those transplants at this point in the year because you can take advantage of already being outside. It's not too hot to kill the plants you've got in the shade. You just have to make sure that water, that soil stays reasonably moist. So no heavy drying, no real soppy wet soil.
You might try Martin's too,
Yeah.
over on Broad Street.
They do a good job of packing some stuff in, but they also have an excellent greenhouse set up there, so that makes life easier for them. And then you need those smaller hardware stores, something like Kelton's, where they carry just a little bit of everything. They'll have stuff. It's just kind of calling around and asking and seeing.
Do you recommend going through the hassle of soaking the bean seed? You have to do that like it's an enzyme, or what is it?
Some of the beans will come inoculated with the
That's it, inoculated.
nitrogen fixing bacteria, and you can soak them that way, soak them ahead of time. Growing up, my grandfather never bothered with it, and we never ran out of beans. Some plants, though, do benefit heavily from being soaked ahead of time. It's just reading through and figuring out what's the common consensus for that cultivar you're dealing with. Because it's even different on a case-by-case basis within the different kinds of whatever you're dealing with. Any other questions? Okay. Planting, stem, variety, and time of maturity. Early girl tomatoes, are everyone thinks about putting those out in the spring. They make another excellent run for doing a late season planting, because that 70-day turnaround is just as good for you going into the fall as it is trying to get early tomatoes from the spring. So what's the cutoff date? The cutoff date is our average first frost. So that means that it's the first time the air temp is at or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Around here, that is my favorite day because it's my anniversary, October 14th. I get to keep track of two things for the price of one. So how do you plan your planting dates? Well, you start out with a fairly complicated looking formula. So you start with the average date for the first frost, well, it's October 14th. You determine if your plant growing can take a light freeze before harvest or not. So we'll use beans because they can take usually one light frost. This will adjust the starting date by by either 2 weeks ahead or 2 weeks after. So beans, we'll probably want to do 2 weeks ahead. So most seed packets estimate the days from planting to maturity. You'll want to add 10 days because it's getting cooler. As we go along, like I said earlier, those daytimes, they're going to get shorter and shorter. Temperatures are going to get lower and lower. That's going to affect growth speed. And then you're going to subtract the total number of days required for the vegetable to grow from the day you want to begin maturing and finding it'll be at latest planting date. That's a big long sentence. It's actually really simple once you look at it. So here's your example. October 15th, which is our actual average frost, I just like the 14th for previous explained reasons. Days to mature after planting, 50 days. So we're going to add 10 days to that, so that's 60 days. So October 15th minus 60 days, which is at August 15th. So between the first week of August and the second week of August is when you're going to want to put out your last run of beans. Now, if it's something that's going to take and be more cold hardy, like let's say kale, which can take a couple of hard freezes, especially if it's protected, we could actually go 2 weeks back. So the last of it you can put in is September. So that first week of September. So how do you plant the fall garden? Do it pretty much the same way as your summer garden, again with a few small shifts. There we go. One, if you haven't pulled your soil test yet and you're concerned about it, now's the time to do it before you get in there and digging. Extension does it. Done lost my place. Dickens Turf and Landscape is a really in-depth one, but for most of your vegetable plants, you just need one with the extension. It's $12 now. You wind up needing about a sandwich bag full of soil to bring up to them. Please make sure it is dry, or else it can take up to 2 weeks to dry out your sample. Because they get stuck out and just put it in the windowsill. You'll want to do mulching around, yes ma'am.
The dirt sample, does it have to be from different places in the garden or just pick a spot and dig?
The best way to do it is to say this is your garden. You'll start in this corner here, and you'll just zigzag ever so often, digging down a shovel spade's depth, and take a plug about that big, so about 2 inches long, out of the base of that hole. Throw your soil back in, throw your plug into a bucket, continue your path, shake and mix it all up, make sure it dries out, and throw that in your sandwich bag. Come up here, and they'll walk you through the rest of the process. Filling out all the paperwork. You can usually test for up to 3 different ways on anything. So if you're doing a big plot garden, you're wanting to maybe shift some stuff over to doing blueberries, you can write blueberries down on there, and they'll tell you how much what to add to the soil to adjust it for blueberries. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did, thank you.
Okay. Mulching is very important now because it conserves the soil's temperature. It keeps everything nice and moderate. We can get drier around here in the fall, which is why it's usually a really good time to work your soil. So mulching also helps preserve your moisture a little bit better. Yes, sir.
What type of mulch?
I would probably go with either straw, a real light wood mulch, or my personal favorite is pine fines. If you're not familiar with
What?
pine fines, it's a
Right.
pine bark nugget mulch. It's like half the size of your hand, kind of looks like shingle pieces. It's that ground into confetti.
You can get a chunk of that for example.
Pretty much anywhere else. Sometimes it's named gardener's helper or soil conditioner. It's just a very loose, fine material with a lot of dust in there that makes for a real light film over the soil.
It's all natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's called pine fine.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Richard, can sawdust be used for mulch?
It can. I'd probably recommend dosing it with like some coffee grounds or something first, because straight sawdust can draw some extra nitrogen from the soil, especially
What about
in places.
ashes?
I wouldn't use them as a mulch.
You would or you would not?
I would not use ashes as a mulch. You can use the thin section, just doing a real thin dusting. If you put too much ash down, it can turn into lime. And then too much lime will burn your soil almost as bad as too much acid. Grass clippings for people who haven't been putting down a lot of lawn chemicals, they work really well. And again, we're talking about the fall, so lots of people are raking leaves. So go through and mulch your leaves up and use that as a mulch.
This is gonna sound silly. How about dead weeds?
Dead weeds.
Dried out dead weeds. I've been pulling weeds like crazy and just, they're so dried out.
Make sure they are good and dry. Chop them
Right.
up as fine as you can. If there's any seed heads, pull those off. And either toss those into a fire to make you some ash, or throw them into the bottom of your compost bin so they can burn that way. But yeah, you can, as long as they're not putting out seed and that root mass is actually good and dead, you can go through there and use them for that. If you do have weeds that are coming up in your beds, you can go through and just cut them down, knock all the the seed heads off, just take and cut them off and throw them into a bag. Go through and cut all the green material down, just let it lay where it falls. And that can serve as a good mulch. I got some folks I was talking to the other day that they've had their garden go to grass. So it's like just go through, get all the seed heads out and cut and lay it down. And then you can worry about dealing with the excess seed next spring or over the course of the winter.
Chop and drop.
Yep, chop and drop. Seed depth needs to be twice as deep as recommended. Generally, you're doing at least the same depth as the seed up to twice. In the fall, you're going to wind up going even further. You're going to do 3 to 4 times that seed depth, because that stuff needs to get down in there to get to the moisture and the temperatures it needs to take and come on. Another little trick you can use is in the spot where you're putting down all those cool season seeds. Once you've got them in the soil, lay a sheet of cardboard in over top of that. Just keep everything a little moist. then every couple days, go out there and lift that piece of cardboard up and look underneath it for germination. Whenever you start seeing the seeds germinating, you can take and pull that cardboard back. Because that shading will keep the soil more moist and cooler than just if you left it exposed. So you don't have to worry about keeping the water levels consistent.
How about newspaper?
Newspaper can do the same thing, though it is harder to take and lift up. Now you can use that in between your rows. Take your little time, make sure it's 4 or 5 sheets thick so that it'll actually hold together real well if it starts drying out. And you can put that on either side of where your rows are, those strips, and that'll kind of help keep everything a little bit more moderate in those areas. You'll still lose a little bit in between because seeds are strong, but garden seeds aren't always necessarily tough enough to push through a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, we haven't figured out a way to make beans grow like bamboo yet. Preparing your ground or your pot, because container gardening is perfectly feasible in these methods. Get all your dead and unproductive stuff out of there, diseased plant material, trash it or burn it, or throw it deep into the compost pile. If you're going to composting and it's honest to goodness, like viral or bacterial or fungal infected, I'd turn it into burn material and then just add a little bit of that ash over time to the compost pile, or spread it out in the garden to help with insects. It's just a good way to make sure you purify everything out. You're not recycling any diseased material. Again, can't say this enough, remove all disease and insect infested material. That's the burn infested material. Compost to where you've cleaned up, that way you can replenish that nutrient load in the soil. That way you're feeding your ground, because the more you feed your ground, the better you feed your plants. Because it's more important to have a healthy, well-fed soil than to try and feed a plant and keep it in that position, because the ground's going to do a lot better job of it than you are. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a particular brand of compost that you recommend if I've got to go to Walmart and get it or something?
Honestly, anything's going to be better than nothing. Just make sure that it is as close to cold as you can get it. And what that means in terms of compost is that it's not still microbially active, so it's not pushing off heat. It's cold. It's gone into where it's not churning through nitrogen fast enough to take and actually make a temperature. They actually have piles of elephant dung out in Africa. They'll take acacia branches and stick them into. And acacia is a tough, strong wood that's very burn resistant. They can pull it back out of its own fire.
So if we were doing our own composting, you'd recommend cold compost, takes longer than hot compost? Or?
Well, that cold compost is just really good, broke down, very humid material. It's that stuff that whenever you get into it, you literally smell the earth. It's got that good, rich,
Takes
organic
longer,
smell.
but it's a better product.
It's a lot finer. When you're buying compost, it's important to get it that way as best you can, because that means you're going to have less chances of introducing stuff into the garden. Everything will have a chance to really good cook and leach out.
If you can find it, mushroom compost is probably your best.
Yeah.
Mushroom?
The place down on 96 Southern Creations, they have bulk mushroom
Yeah.
compost.
If you can get that stuff, it is really, really good stuff. Because what that is horse chicken, cow manure, straw, whatever bedding was in with those animals. Little peat moss, urea, and lime, all mixed
That's all in
together.
mushroom compost?
Mhm.
Wow.
And then they can take and put mushrooms on that for as long as the mushrooms grow well.
I mean, everything works in it.
Where did you say you get it?
It's
Southern Creations has
Southern
got it.
Creations, it's down off 96.
My nursery's
Outdoor
got it.
Station.
Garden's
Okay,
carries it.
good.
Do they carry it in bulk, or can you get it like in a front end loader? Like, can you get a lot of it?
Bulk front end loader.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I have someone in my house who's allergic to mushrooms, so would that be a compost not to use if they have that allergy?
Are they allergic to the mushrooms themselves or the spores, or do you know?
I don't know. I know they're allergic to amoxicillin, penicillin, and like almost all fungi. So
I would probably do something more like a manure or composted chicken manure or something like that.
Okay.
or even earthworm castings.
Okay,
There's going to be some fungal stuff in those, but the load is going to be a lot smaller.
okay,
Whereas with mushroom compost, it's already pretty well inoculated, and every once in a while, you can get a hold of a batch, will start throwing you out additional button mushrooms.
okay.
Those are edible or poisonous?
Button mushrooms are edible. Though I always have to do this whenever I talk about mushrooms. Unless you know what mushrooms you're dealing with for 100% sure, and probably an extra 20% on top of that, don't screw with it. Because we've got a lot of mushrooms here that can easily kill you and everyone else in a heartbeat.
They're all edible, some of them only ones.
Yeah.
Replacing soil containers that were used in midsummer, that's especially important if you use a lot of liquid fertilizers, things like Miracle-Gro or any of the other just granular powder fertilizers. Those guys have a lot of salts in them, and for as often as you have to put them into your soil to keep the plants sticking on them, you can build up a huge amount of salt in your garden to take and cause issues for plants down the road. That's why I usually recommend people to not use that stuff on their plants any more than once every week or two, sometimes less frequently if possible. If you can get you a good compost bin going, or find somebody's compost to take and get you a few scoops of, making compost tea is an excellent alternative to doing liquid fertilizers. All you have to do, simplest way, is a 5-gallon bucket, fill it full of water, take an old pillowcase, put 2 scoops of compost into that, tie it up, drop it down in your bucket of water, put it somewhere where you're going to walk past it a few times in the course of the day. Just every time you go by, reach down and just do a quick little plunge and walk on. And then you'll eventually notice that water start turning the color of tea. And you can take and scoop off of that and spray that on your plants. You'll water it straight into the soil around the base of them. And whenever it starts getting a little low, fill it back up and just keep dirty compost tea. The only faster way is just take your bucket and throw some compost down at the bottom of it and just make sure it sits somewhere the rain can fill it up.
That begs the question, if you've got a small chicken coop, 5 or 6 chickens in it, could you just like collect their manure, soak it in a bucket of water and do
Oh,
the same
yeah.
thing? And then just water your plants with that?
The more though you can take and break that down, the better, because chickens, even in small numbers, like even a flock of like 4 to 10, they produce a lot of ammonia, which gives you a lot of water-soluble nitrogen, which can burn your plants.
So would you let it just like sit out for a few months and really break down?
Or if you got a compost bin, you have a good continual influx of brown materials like more straw and wood chips and things, or sawdust, you can take and mix all that chicken manure scrap bedding into that, and it'll start just baking it down real
So
fast.
if it gets to the point where you really can't smell much of the manure smell, you're kind of safe?
Yep. Well, if it smells like good earth, you're good. Do you have a question, man? Okay. All right. If not having a fall garden, like I said earlier, do your soil test, do your vending, maybe throw you down a cover crop, which is always best. At least mulch, move on for the fall. Because the more work you can do now, the less work you have to do in the spring, whenever the rain likes to come through about every 4 days and mess up the plants. Dealing with the frost. So if there's a frost warning, then it's mild, so it's not going to get lower than like 30 degrees, so we're just actually going to get a little frost. Try covering your tender plants, and you can use a whole bunch of different things for that. Burlap sacks, pots, row cover, plastic bottles you cut the bottoms out of, pretty much anything you can use. Root crops like carrots and radishes, they'll usually need to be mulched or harvested before a good hard freeze, and that's something below that 30-degree line. So it's something that you go out that next morning and you might think the ground would be nice and hard little ridges where someone's driven their truck through the mud, then you need to get your plants covered with mulch or pool. Do not panic. We always get warm spells after that first frost. So if you can get stuff through that first little bit of cold that we get in fall, we'll probably have about another 2 weeks of warm afterwards where everything can just kind of muddle along. This is colloquially known as Indian summer. It is a wonderful time to go out and harvest everything you've got left. When a killing frost is inevitable, harvest the most tender vegetables. So that's going to be anything like tomatoes, peppers, your bean plants if we're going to get a real hard killing frost, let them be pulled. Little trick I sometimes forget to mention about tomato plants. So if you'll go through about somewhere between the 1st and 15th of September and just go in and cut the tops off of all your tomato plants, all those growing tips, they'll start shunting sugars straight to the fruit. They'll make them ripen up faster. Because they'll think they've already been bit or something's come through and browsed. They'll trigger survival mode and they will finish that business that plants do, which is making more plants. Some different ways of taking and protecting the plants. So floating row cover, that's something most familiar to tobacco farmers, but it works well with practically anything. That stuff is even light enough that you can throw it over stuff during the summer to help keep the bugs off and keep some shade on the plants. Cloches, which I always mispronounce terribly. What it is, it's usually a bell shape made out of glass, the real fancy ones anyway. And it has an open spot in the top that you can take and put a cork down into if you want to. So you just go out there and you set that over top of the plant. It creates a nice little miniature greenhouse over the plant. And if you want to make sure you don't burn your plant, you keep that cork out and that spot will be a top open and it'll keep venting the heat. Now, a cheap redneck way of making this work is to take and save all of your gallon milk jugs and orange juice and tea jugs. Cut the bottom out of them. And you have the lid, so like punch a hole through the lid, tie a string into it, and tie that to the handle. Just go through and set that out around your plants. On that night when they're going to get cold, or in the spring when you're trying to get stuff started early. And if you need to trap heat, you put the lid on. If you don't need to trap the heat, you keep the lid off, and it's hanging right there next to the plants. It's a good, easy way to keep everything safe.
Could you explain that again?
Yeah.
The redneck version?
Okay, spring when the plant's small and can fit in a container, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you just take and you set that bottle over top of it.
In the
So-
spring when the plant's small?
Yeah, that'll help protect it from some bugs and take and give it some extra heat to keep it from the cold. But what you do is you take that jug and you just cut the bottom off of it.
Okay,
So just down there where just the very bottom where you normally set it down.
right,
That'll use the handle and the lid and all that space.
right.
You take the lid, punch a hole through it, just enough where you can slide a string through. Knot that up so that it can't come back off. Tie the other string off with the handle. So now you have your lid kept where you can find it real easy.
That's just so you don't lose your lid.
Yeah.
Right,
And then you'll take and, if we're gonna have a cold night, just go out there and put those jugs on top of everything. And during that afternoon, so it can trap some heat. And then, first cold spells of the year, I wouldn't even worry about putting the lid on it. Just take and leave it off and it'll keep enough heat and moisture in there to keep that frost from being able to settle in on the plants.
Right.
And then it'll do the same.
that's small plants, then.
Small plants, usually anything that's about that size or smaller. Because anything bigger than that, you can't get it over top of it or it's going to be brushing those edges and burn them.
What retains the jug above the plant?
Just you kind of set it in there, just working it in there. You could use a stick. If you wanted to make sure it wouldn't get blown off by the wind, you can take and tack it in with a stick with a little Y in it. You use tent stake, just anything to kind of hold it there in place.
Yeah.
For pots, I'll take and have a bunch of old bricks. I'll just go through and set those bricks in on top of them. Because pots actually work really the same way because they've got all the holes there in the bottom. So when you turn them upside down, you've got your vents. So you just don't have as much light that can get in there through the course of the day if you have to leave it on there.
It's awesome, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And then there's also the best thing you can do if you're doing a botanical garden, and that is a cold frame. Now, a cold frame can be set up in any number of different ways, but it comes down essentially to this. You have a planting area. You have it set up so that whenever you lay a piece of plastic or plexiglass or something across the top of it, it's leaning towards the south a little bit. And what that does is that lets all that good sun trap in there, and then that keeps everything nice and warm. And then if you need to vent heat, you can take and lift it off or pull it back. This one is glass on hinges. They get real fancy now where you can get some that have actuators that will lift it up based on the temperature inside the cold frame. That's a great place to both grow crops through the winter and to start seedlings out and to harden seedlings off in the spring for the summer.
Quick question.
Yes.
On that picture, just, it showed that 72 cell flats inside that cold frame. Just out of curiosity, if you got the 72 cell flats that you mentioned on soil that are like 2 inches deep, how big on average would you expect that to support? How tall should the plant be before you throw the plant into the garden?
Generally, whenever you go to do a transplant, you want them to be wider than they are tall. So about the time they get to that point where they are no longer wider than they are high, is when you want to go ahead and get them moved out.
When the plant is no longer wider than they are tall?
Yeah,
Okay.
because a good transplant should be nice and broad and short. It should be a dwarf.
Okay.
Because that
So if
means-
it's tall and thin, you did something wrong.
Probably didn't get enough light or gave it too much nitrogen.
Okay.
And it got a little bit tall and spindly. On tomato plants, that's not a problem. On potatoes, that's not a problem. But on,
Because they can root right off the stalk.
yeah,
Okay.
but on other plants, that can be an issue.
Okay.
Peppers don't throw roots off like tomatoes do, so when they start getting tall and spindly, they start getting weak.
Do you prefer those 72 cell flats, or do you prefer using like a blocker? If you had a 100-foot garden and you really wanted to grow some food, would you think a blocker is better, make your own blockers?
If you've got access to it, it'd be fine. You can even use it in there, because that's what they did, actually.
Right.
They just put the blocks there in the flats. It really comes down to where you've had the best success with and are most experienced at, because you can do practically anything. So it's just mostly personal trial and error, because I'll grow stuff just straight into the ground, or I'll still my grandfather's method, which was 6 45-gallon black pots that he just direct sow into, and then pull a huge sheet of plexiglass over the top of it. And they sat in the full sun all day.
And then what, you transplant them out there in the
Yep,
garden?
you gently take a good wide spade and slide up next to them and move them out in the garden.
I didn't have any very good luck with the 72 cell flats. You just tear up so much root getting it out of there and into the ground, and it just
Yeah,
a big hassle.
The big thing is always, my biggest suggestion anytime you're doing things in flats, just make sure that the plant's soil area is contained unto itself. That way, so, like, those are actually individual blocks themselves,
Yeah.
so they're not running into each other. So whenever, as long as everybody is separate in their spots, you won't have that root issue.
So the roots don't even mingle with other plants?
Right.
Okay.
The only time that'll happen is if you're doing it where everyone's separate is if you've left them in there too long. And again, trial and error. I'm gonna carry through some slides real quick. I'm not careful. So there's a real simple cold frame. Straw, soil, planting beds, and a sheet of plastic. And enough framing to hold everything up. Again, one made with straw, they put a cross board in there, support the weight, sheet of plexiglass across the top. There's a real nice fancy one made out of greenhouse plastic on all sides and a good frame. It's got the little support strut right there. You can really easily set that up with an actuator that'll take and adjust according to the heat. One done as a hoop house. And then fairly standard old-fashioned one, just to take and make you a little box. He's putting some weather stripping all around the edge to kind of make a good seal. And then it's just a sheet of plastic tacked on to a wood frame.
Almost nice. Nice. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any of those work really well. If you type cold frames into internet engine search, you'll show a whole bunch of different ways of doing them.
When you're using the plastic for the hoops and the cold frames, is there, if you're on a budget, can you just get any plastic? It's better to
As
get
long as it's
safety
clear.
plastic.
Are slightly opaque because you don't want anything real dark. And it's like 4 or 5 millimeters thick. It needs to have some good tug to it. That way you can tack it down as you need to, and it can take kind of being punched and get with stuff. That way you don't wind up having holes and everything.
So the stuff you get at Lowe's that's cheap, well, it's not half roach, but that'll suffice.
Mhm.
It's thick enough and it's not designated ag.
No. As long as it's a good, opaque to clear materials that can take a little beating, you're good to go on it.
The problem with the construction plastic, it won't last more than a year. it'll get brittle and start cracking.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's not
UV
heat
degradation.
resistant.
Yeah. The greenhouse fabric will last you about 15 years.
So it is worth paying for.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Especially in a setup like this, because it's real easy to keep that where you don't have to tear it to get back off the hoops.
Yeah.
Whenever you're dealing with big greenhouses like where I work, where we have to account for huge influxes of heat throughout the year, or not really set up for it, we have to reorder plastic every year because the only way to get it back off our houses is to go literally cut it off the houses.
Where's the best place to get that stuff?
If you want a whole bunch of it,
Yeah.
real good stuff, Morton's, is that over in McMinnville?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I believe it's Morton's over in McMinnville. They are a nursery, greenhouse, landscape supply warehouse. And they will sell you everything you ever wanted to try to do in horticulture with.
And if you know what sizes you need, walk in and ask them about remnants. Sometimes you can pick up some remnants real cheap
Yeah.
of the size you need.
They'll have a lot of scrap pieces and stuff
Yeah.
where folks just, it wound up not being cut to spec. So they'll take and just sell it off as cheap and quick as they
Is that
can.
Morton's or Ford?
Morton's. Other best practices, remember containers can be moved into those microclimates we talked about earlier. That's the great thing about a pot, they're mobile. Plant fall garden at the same time you plant your spring and summer gardens, because a lot of times it's hard to find seed later in the year. So go ahead and figure out what you want to do later and order it all at once. Just have some put to the side. Best place to source seed, unless you want to get real fancy and long term with it, back of the junk drawer in the house. Everyone's got that grandmother who used to be able to pull seeds out of the back of the drawer that have been sitting there for, she doesn't even know how long, and you throw them out in the garden and they grow. Why that works, grandma only knows. Include your seed needs for fall and order your seeds. Again, that's planning. It also helps with your planning, that way you know what you're succeeding into. If you're really wanting to get into intensive gardening practices, which will be a class I'll be doing next month. Direct seeding is usually best for your fall garden with a handful of transplanting needs, like what we were talking about earlier. Thin organic mulch helps keep everybody happy and moist and healthy. Keeps that soil warm while everything's germinating. Best vegetables for fall gardening. So all your leaf greens and your brassicas, so your full season crops, they're all really good options. A lot of your root crops are really good for fall gardening. Kale collards, full season vegetables usually withstand several frosts. Know one fellow who managed to pull some kale out of his garden all the way through winter a few years ago. So he went from summer to summer pulling kale. And to keep it really, really simple, leaf greens, your brassicas, so all of your cole crops, so collards, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, mustard, cabbage, all those guys. Your root crops, so carrots, radishes, onions. Just some fun pictures of some various things. Butterhead lettuce. There's a picture of collards if you've never seen it. All sorts of ornamental leaf greens. So ones of different colors. So not only can you plant stuff to eat, you can plant stuff to look pretty for your fall decorations. Nice curly leaf kale. Leaf salad mixes. A lot of times it's referred to as musculin. Beets. Several cultivars of beets have really good leaf greens that you can pick 2 or 3 times, and then you just let them go and start growing the root, and you have your bee roots. Same thing actually goes for turnips, because you keep the greens and you keep the turnips themselves. All sorts of different types of spinach. Spinach is one tough little plant. I have a slide that I can keep forgetting to put in here. Yes, ma'am.
Is it better to throw that in the ground or transplant it?
Little leaf plants like that, I'd always do direct seed.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a lot
Once you
easier.
start harvesting with the spinach, you kind of have to plant more, right? It's not like a pick and come again.
Well, it is a little bit of a pick and come again, but you want to have some staggered planting so you can keep running with it. As long if you have a big enough spot of it, you can actually just go through and pick you off a little bit and don't have time to reach into more plants
You will
and
do
more
that.
leaves,
Okay.
especially through the winter, because it'll be cool enough that it just keeps growing. And
So would
so-
you pick the bigger outer leaves
yeah, you always start from the outside and go on in whenever you're doing pick and coming in.
and let the center of it continue to grow?
Swiss chard, winter squashes, moorhead cabbage, carrots. Carrots are so easy, especially once you get good loose soil to grow them in. Put them out, you pick off of them through most of the winter unless you want to get real wet. If they get to the size where you know that's where I want them to be at, go to Walmart, buy you one of those plastic tubes. Bring it into the house with a couple bags of play sand. Okay, put your little layer of sand in the bottom, do your layer of carrots, lightly mist everybody. Sand, mist, carrots, mist, sand. Just keep repeating that until you get all the way to the top. In the interim, you'll cut off all the green at the top, not all the green, just that little stuff like what you see when you go in the store. And just as you need carrots, you go out there and you take scoop you some out, rinse them off, and then go cook them. And that's how you store carrots, cheap and easy.
It's almost like a mini cold cellar. huh?
Yep. Especially if you've got a cool place to take a put in. And during the winter, we've all got a cool place somewhere. Turnips, onions. Now, who here knows what type of onion we grow in our area? We grow in Middle Tennessee long day onions. Okay? If you ever go buy onion sets and you see short day, don't bother with them. If you see intermediate, you're okay. If you see long day, you're good. And if you want actual bulbs, you treat them just like you do your garlic. You put them out in the fall and you harvest in the spring. And that's how you get your onions.
So the fall is a great time to put the garlic in.
Don't wind up with any of that bitterness you get from it during the summer if you try to grow it out through the summer. Because it gets real strong if you grow it out through the course of the summer. Pop choy, so more brassicas, a whole bunch of different mustard greens, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, yet another brassica. There's your onions and your kale and leeks. And then I
Can
like
you back up that slide?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
like that too. That's the garlic.
Yep, that's your garlic. See how it's actually putting on kind of a cane?
So that's after they've harvested it, or is that still growing?
That's what they went through and they've harvested. See how the leaves are that yellow color and they're kind of laying over some?
Yeah.
You can actually, before this point, once they start lightly turning yellow, you can speed the process up by going through and kind of breaking them in half and just letting them lay over. And just like where we go through and cut the tips off the tomatoes, that winds up forcing those bulbs to go ahead into survival mode. And they just kind of swell up and do everything they need to set the next generation. Another brassica, because there's a whole bunch of different ones of them. This is a walking stick cabbage. That's actually stalk that it's growing up on, that you can cut it and turn it into a walking stick or a broom handle. And it's a pretty neat little picture and just another thing you can do with plants. Good sources of information. And of course, always extension universities are great for getting it and stuff.
Can we get a copy of the slide presentation?
They'll definitely be on the YouTube page with everything that's went, and I'll take and try to get a PDF download on there as well.
Okay, great.
Some of my favorite resources, mysquarefootgarden.net is great if you really want to go gung-ho with square foot gardening. Seed Savers, I love their seeds. Stark Brothers is great for doing any of your larger perennial shrubs and bushes because their good old-fashioned paper catalog is now online. They celebrated their 200th anniversary this year.
Which one did Seed Savers?
Stark Brothers.
Stark Brothers.
Yeah, they've been around for a while. Let's see. All right.